All right, guys, the senator's going to say a few words, and then we'll open it up for questions. Senator?
Thanks, Michelle. Good morning to everybody. Thanks for joining us. I thought I'd just make a few comments about the President's State of the Union address last night, and then we'll open it up for questions. Point one of the most difficult lessons I've had to learn in life and in politics is that people don't know or don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I think the President deserves credit for trying to be conciliatory last night. Generally speaking, the President is not a turn the other cheek kind of guy. I think he believes that if you turn the other cheek too far, you just get it in the neck. I think sometimes that impacts his effectiveness in the sense that people don't hear his ideas. They're focused on his approach or his style. Last night, he tried to reach out to our Democratic friends, and I appreciate that. And even though they may not say so, I think our Democratic friends felt that way. Number two, in terms of substance, the President talked about the past, the present, and the future last night. The past, he celebrated America and our many achievements. More specifically, he celebrated the success we've had in the last 2 years with things like cutting taxes, which has stimulated economic growth. He celebrated the fact that we have one of the lowest unemployment rates we've ever had, including but not limited to for African Americans. He celebrated the fact that we have further stimulated the economy by rolling back a lot of rules and regulations. He celebrated the work we've done for health care choice for our veterans, just to name a few. The President talked about the stalemate that we find ourselves in with respect to a border wall. To me, what I heard was that he's willing to he's willing to negotiate, but he doesn't believe, nor do I, that it is possible to seal or secure 1,900 miles of real estate without using a wall or a barrier or a fence or whatever the politically correct term is today. The future, he talked about a number of his initiatives, but the two that got my attention in particular were infrastructure. We do need to make an investment in infrastructure in America. We can all agree to that. Of course, the problem is how to pay for it. I'm not too keen on this idea of just borrowing more money. I think we're going to have to find the money within our budget, and I think we should be able to find the money within a $4 trillion budget. No reasonable person believes that there's not waste in the federal budget, or at least there aren't expenditures that are not as high a priority as infrastructure. The President finally talked about health care and the cost of health insurance. He didn't give us a lot of specifics. It's clear to me that he's relying on Congress to add meat to the bone. I'm ready to go. If I were king for a day, I'm not. Don't aspire to be. I would repeal the Affordable Care Act and replace it with something better. That's probably not going to happen because of our divided Congress. So we're going to have to break this down in terms of bite-sized pieces, but I'm ready to get started. I think it's, if it's not the most important domestic issue for most Americans, it's certainly in the top 2 or 3. And with that, I will be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Brad?
Hey, it's actually Harrison Golden here. Fred stepped out quickly. So, Senator, in terms of, I guess, this timeline that we're talking about here, I guess tentatively a week and a half before a prospect of another government shutdown, do you see any progress in that regard?
I don't think we're making that much progress. As you know, we have conferees, Republicans, Democrats, House members, Senate members. To some extent, to a large extent in the House, the strings are being pulled behind the scenes by Speaker Pelosi. obviously, we're consulting with the president on our side. Unless and until Speaker Pelosi is willing to concede that, as all border security experts say, it's impossible to seal or secure 1,900 miles of border without using a wall or a barrier, I don't think we'll make much progress. That's not the only thing the president is pushing for, as you know. He also wants to add security through the use of technology at our ports of entry. He wants more detention beds. He wants more border control agents, humanitarian relief. He'd like to reform the asylum system for immigration into our country, which is broken. But I don't think we'll ever get to those things until we get past the issue of the wall. And it seems to me that the ball is in Speaker Pelosi's court. I think in her heart, she's an intelligent person. In her heart, she knows that we can't secure the southern border without using a barrier or a wall. That's been our experience with San Diego and Yuma and El Paso, where we have walls that are working. That's been the experience of other countries that I've talked about, the West Bank and Israel, for example. The border wall between Yemen and Saudi Arabia, just to name two. And it's up to Speaker Pelosi. Speaker Pelosi, it's clear to me, does not like the president. Looks to me like she hates the president, and hatred is a very underestimated emotion. And until her hatred is less than her desire to secure the border, we probably won't make any progress. At the end of the 15 days, I think it's February 15th, I don't know, but I don't think the president's going to shut down government again. I think he'll declare a national emergency. Some of my Senate colleagues, including Republicans, think that would be the wrong approach. It's certainly not my preferred approach, but unlike some of my colleagues, I don't think the world will spin off its axis if he does that. I suspect the sun will still come up the next day. It'll probably be litigated, which will delay the building of the wall, but that's kind of where I see us heading.
Melinda?
Hi.
Hey, Melinda.
In terms of, how are you?
Good.
In terms of the sort of bipartisan tone and the let's work together discussion that the president had for part of his speech at Little, did you really take that as genuine in light of the fact that leading up to the speech he was tweeting some very not nice things about Speaker Pelosi, and that has not been his approach through most of his tenure so far? I mean, I get the tone of a State of the Union address is a little different than normal, but that tone is sort of striking for him since that's not how he's governed.
That's a really good question. I don't know what's in the president's head or what's in his heart. I've spent enough time with him to know that he's not a turn the other cheek kind of guy. He's a very successful developer from New York City, and he's combative. Sometimes that helps him, sometimes it hurts him. I talked about this border security wall issue with him in the past few weeks for a couple of hours. He didn't have an ugly thing to say about anybody, including but not limited to Speaker Pelosi. Made it very clear to me he's willing to negotiate. So far, Speaker Pelosi has refused to negotiate. My experience with the president is that privately, and I think you see it some publicly, he can, when he wants to be, he can be a very charming guy. He's very funny, very interesting person. He's very intelligent. You may disagree with his positions, but he's a very intelligent man. Does he mean it? I think he does, but you know, I have no way of knowing what's in his heart. But just based on my discussions with him in the past couple of weeks, I'd have to say yes.
Jeff Benford?
Hey, Senator, how you doing?
Good, man.
Hey, my home state is Georgia, so I'm interested in reacting to the Democratic rebuttal from Stacey Abrams, who lost the gubernatorial race there. And she said, we have to hold everybody accountable in the highest offices for their racist words and deeds and call racism what it is. Wrong. What is she talking about? I mean, that's a constant thing from the Democrats. But what is she talking about?
Well, I didn't hear Ms. Abrams' speech. I have read the newspaper articles. I understand she said she didn't listen to the State of the Union address. I think just seems to me logically it's hard to rebut something if you haven't listened to it. I think Ms. Abrams is either running for governor again of Georgia or for the United States Senate, and I think you have to filter what she says through that lens. We've seen a change in the Democratic Party nationally, and in some cases locally in terms of Louisiana. My personal opinion is that as I've watched the Democratic Party change, the Democratic Party doesn't have a lot of empathy today for ordinary Americans. We saw it when President Obama made fun of many Americans for, in his words, clinging to their God and their guns. We saw it in the presidential race when Secretary Clinton referred to many ordinary Americans as deplorables. I just see more and more our Democratic friends mocking ordinary Americans for believing in the Second Amendment and going to church and working hard and trying to teach their kids morals. And it seems to me that today, with the modern Democratic Party, in order to gain favor with the Democratic Party, if you're part of the middle class, that's not enough. You also have to be part of some specific minority or subgroup of people that the Democratic Party deems meritorious. And I think that's a very divisive approach. We have a new crop of congresswomen in the House. Part of them are led by Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. She truly believes in socialism and having government own the means of production. I don't agree with her, and I don't think most Americans agree with her. This idea of a 70% marginal tax rate, I think most Americans will be opposed to that. I've seen some of the polls, but most of the ordinary Americans I talk to feel like, look, we understand that taxes are the price we pay for government services and to live in an organized society, but enough is enough. Right now, government taxes the clothes we wear and the food we eat and the cars we drive and the houses we live in, and government taxes us when we work and when we play, and government even taxes us when we die. And enough is enough. The idea of Medicare for all is basically to have government take over health care. If you have health insurance, for example, through your employer and you're happy with it, too bad. You got to give it up. I think what the Democrats would like to do is have government take control of hospitals and doctors and nurses and clinics and regulate them like utilities. And that's going to mean fewer choices, more taxes, and longer lines. And I don't believe that's what the American people want. But that's what the Democratic Party more and more is beginning to stand for. And I just don't think they'll be successful doing that. And I think, I just would say, I don't know Ms. Abrams. She seems like a very intelligent person, but I didn't consider it to be a rebuttal. I considered it to be a campaign announcement without naming which office she's running for next.
Greg?
Anything else, guys?
Yeah, I got a question.
I'm good.
Sure, go ahead.
I guess one of the most striking things to me is that the president called out socialism during the State of the Union. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think he's right. I mean, some people don't understand what socialism is. It's government owning the means of production. It's less freedom. Its tenet is based on the proposition that government can spend the money you earn better than you can, and that government, the people in government, are smarter and more virtuous than ordinary Americans, and that we can't run our own lives. We have to look to government to run our lives for us. I don't think that's the principle on which our government was founded. I've never seen socialism work. I wouldn't hold Cuba up as a model for the world. I certainly wouldn't hold Venezuela up as a model for the world, nor would I hold North Korea, China. You know, I mean, I know China has a economic system supposedly based on quasi-capitalism. That's becoming less and less, but its political system is socialist, totalitarian, authoritarian, collectivist, whatever you want to call it. And I don't think I don't think Americans will ever embrace that, nor do I hope Americans will ever embrace that. That's not what made our country the greatest country in all of human history, in my opinion.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.